Greetings, everybody. This is Serpentine451 here, and welcome back to another episode of Manga Maniacs. And joining me, as always, is Jeffrey. How you doing tonight, Jeffrey? And everybody, this is Serpentine451 here, and
I am doing fantastic. It's good to see you again, Tony. My voice is a little bit wonky, but I'm excited to talk about a guy who is absolutely miserable.
Well, if the weather here in Oregon is any indication, everyone's going to be miserable.
Yeah. So today, we'll be talking about The Rising of the Shield Hero, the manga, not the light novel or the anime, because I'm sure that you can't get enough of talking about that anime on Weeb Warriors already.
Yep. Which is a very quality adaptation, and its source material is actually one of the better isekai manga / light novels out there.
Yeah, it's definitely a high quality kind of jam. So spoiler-free review, premise, and then we talk about the contents of the jam.
Well, essentially, if those who follow Weeb Warriors should know, that this is a world that essentially takes folks from Japan from different periods of time to become heroes that are connected to 4 different types of weaponry: the shield, the sword, the spear, and the bow.
Yeah, and then they all sort of just split up, so it doesn't really feel like the heroes are all that part of the premise. The real meat of the story is following the guy known as the Shield Hero. He can't attack, but he's gonna defend the heck out of himself.
Yep, we have our protagonist now, Fumi, who is set in our timeline in the grand scheme of things. And when he is summoned to this world, he is the second eldest out of all of the heroes, if not the oldest, if I'm remembering things right.
Right. This is an isekai, and it feels like it takes itself pretty seriously. That's just because of the main character's attitude. He's a very practical guy. There are some isekai where the main characters just sort of treat it jovially, and this is not one of those.
No.
This is... Would you say this is closer to ReZero than something like Konosuba or Slime?
Very true. Sure, there may be like more darker... There's some dark implications in Slime, but it's kind of passed over. This is essentially in your face, the harsh reality of going to another world and you're treated like you're a monster.
Yes.
All because of people trying to demonize you in such a way that they can just
probably don't get into spoiler territory yet. We haven't gotten to the review with spoiler-free review section.
Oh, you're right. Yep, you're most certainly right. I apologize.
So I'm going to start on that. Personally, the art is really good. The writing, the writing seems like passable, but I think the main thing is that I just enjoy the premise and the characters a lot. I kind of wish they had more interesting characters aside from just Raftalia and Raph and basically there are 2 female characters that have really cool designs, but everyone else is just kind of... So I'm going to give it a pretty solid 3.5 out of 5, because it's a pretty enjoyable read, even if it does feel a bit sloggy in some areas.
That's understandable.
How do you put this on your grid?
Well, since I'm reviewing its adaptation on Weeb Warriors and how I think that is a perfect transition from source material to anime form, you can kind of tell that I really enjoyed the source material. Even though some of the elements of the source material kind of make it very dark in a lot of places, very harsh, very cruel. But that's one of the things I like about this story. When it comes to its premise, it doesn't try to hold anything back that could be viewed as pretty on the nose, sort of depressing. That's one of the things I can enjoy out of this particular story. It's I kind of think of it It's like how I watched and experienced Fate Zero for the first time, where I was really enraptured by the characters at the crux of the story, their dynamics, and wanting to actually have these characters kind of grow and surpass the struggles that were thrust upon them. Yet these dark situations just continue on. And the horrible luck of the characters just kind of stem through. That's more so because I came to realize that I'm a big fan of Geno Ribuchi's work, as far as Fate Zero is concerned. But when Shield Hero, as far as it's concerned, I like how a lot of the cast, even since Naofumi is our focus character and is representative of kind of the crux of our story and his struggle and his sense of really wanting to help these people is kind of won back after everything that these individuals have put him through. And those who are willing and wanting to put their trust in him, even though a lot of them didn't want to, and just chose to demonize him, makes him a very perfect, in my honest opinion, makes him a good protagonist in this type of story. So I give this a 4 out of 5. Just on my kind of gauge of quality. Yeah. But compared to other isekai stuff, like that time I got reincarnated as a slime, I like it because it is more lighthearted than Shield Hero, but I can like them differently at the same time, at the same level of quality, because they have that well-produced quality to them, but at different branches of the spectrum here.
Yeah, I agree. 4 out of 5. Like, I could probably give it that same score on my scale. I was just like trying to not be too liberal with my high scores, but yeah, this is definitely a good manga. If you're, if you just want some good art and are okay with riding along with a kind of dark story, then this is definitely, going to be on top of their like isekai. Because this one actually kind of subverts that and should feel pretty fresh. I mean, it's not an idea that's like super rare and uncommon. I mean, Solo Leveling pretty much does the same thing with the whole, it's an isekai, but not really at a high difficulty. Same thing with RE0, but at the same time, it's just well told. It's nice,
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
And also, the world itself is very interesting, and it's a lot of the idiosyncrasies of this world are very fascinating.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I would, first and foremost, for those who think that this is a revenge story over or on the same level as its isekai genre, it's not. Not really. And for those who really want to kind of see it as a revenge plot, don't bother. It's sure the first part of the first few chapters are kind of viewed as everyone in this world giving Naofumi the raw deal because of different misconceptions, different things that different agendas people want to push. But it's not a revenge story. Far from it. It's someone who was dealt a bad hand, but over time is just trying to save people, but he's very jaded and very cautious of trusting people.
I'm going to agree and disagree with you on that statement. I agree that it isn't like done like a traditional revenge novel plotline where the character is wronged and then they devote themselves to getting revenge. But at the same time, it like has a different kind of revenge. Like you get the payoff in the manga that you probably haven't gotten to in the anime yet.
And it's coming. But I already knew that it's forthcoming. But I mean, sure.
I would argue that even though you have to wait until like chapter 40 for that payoff for that first thing, you're actually seeing it pay off way before then. Whenever he interacts with the other heroes, or whenever he or whenever he helps out one of his comrades, like that's its own kind of revenge that feels nice. The whole manga feels like it's good for someone who felt that they were wronged, and that's a kind of revenge in itself.
I mean, I can agree with you there, but
You know
I
that
don't think
saying,
that's
like,
the main crux of what this story is supposed to be, as
yeah.
most people kind of misconceive it to be.
But do you get what I'm saying? Like,
I
there's
get you.
that saying, the best revenge is a life well lived. That kind of jam.
I kind of get you there. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. My favorite parts of it personally are that, like, in a manga, you need struggle scenes and you need payoff scenes. The struggling scenes are like seeing Raftalia super miserable and her parents get eaten by dogs, or main characters like having a terrible time. And then the payoff scene is whatever you put at the end of all of that struggling to like reward the reader for making it through. If you look at things like Elfsan, it's pictures of Elfsan. If you look at it, but then like you get stories where the payoff just doesn't work. Like I was reading X-Men Gold, and the payoff there was, I can't even imagine what the payoff for reading that is. But here it's like twofold. One, you get the revenge of the life well lived from the main character, and two, you get to see all this world building with chocobos and raccoon girls. My only problem with that is that they sort of stop after a while. He really should have gotten like a full party and like maybe explored the class system a little more. But it feels like they're rushing, you know?
I mean, at this point in the story, there are more characters that are in now Fumi's party, rather that if it's temporary or it's just trying to, in the case of one character, trying to kind of show her worth to one of the other heroes.
Right. But the main reason I say it feels rushed is just because you could have had, like, he's joined by that party of adventurers, or no, soldiers, after the first big battle. They could have just fleshed out the leader of that party a little bit more and made him into a more of a major character. They could have just not dropped the blacksmith guy. And they could have done a lot of stuff there. I feel like Slime, the time I got reincarnated, Slime does this better because it'll spend almost every available moment taking a new character and being like, hey, cool, check this guy out. They would be cool to hang out with. But I don't feel like Shield Hero does that with anybody except for Raftalia and Philo and the girl who wears the mascot outfits later in the story.
Yeah, and I think that it's going for a less is more sort of quality.
Mm-hmm.
It's quality over quantity.
Yeah,
Not that the characters in Slime aren't lacking in quality, but they're not quality in their own right. Far from it. A lot of them are great characters, and they have very diverse personalities in their own right. But what Shield Hero, what I honestly think is trying to do, is showing that even with a small party, with a small group, you can have a lot of interesting dynamics and personality among the characters, even though the cast itself is small.
Yeah.
In terms of an adventure group.
But the main reason I bring that up is because personally I was way more into the direction it was going in the first part, where he was helping out people, meeting, and new characters would be introduced, like Philo and Raftalia. I kind of wish they had kept that pace, because I'm not super interested in the really big world stakes kind of thing that they're going for now with the giant turtle and the enemy party that wants to keep the world being destroyed. Those cracks, those rifts in reality, they want to keep making them.
I know, but sometimes there's a time and a place for that sort of stuff, and trying to, what they're trying to do is getting our feet wet, like now Fumi trying to explore the great vastness that is this other world.
Yeah.
So they don't want to overload us with too much information.
Right, but I would prefer a little bit like more of a faster drip feed, like something like Avatar: The Last Airbender. They didn't drop everything on you in the very start, but at the same time, like, it feels like Shield Hero is in like its third major direct. So you've got the first part where he's just wandering around the countryside. The second part where they're where that ends when they've basically taken over control of the castle, and now they're in like a third part. But they introduced our main character and the two party members in the first little arc thing, and then they introduced nobody in the second one, and then they introduced one person in the third one. It's a little bit.
Well, not true. We also get the swordswoman Eclair.
They They were the. Remind me who she was again?
Claire was the swordswoman that in one chapter completely defeated the sword hero.
Right, I remember her now. She was like the training lady, but they kind of drop her, you know? She's not
True,
really made into anything now, and she wasn't introduced with all that much fanfare.
and I think that's one of the qualities to at least some of the characters, that they don't need a whole lot to kind of show their personality and what they can do in terms of the story and interacting with other characters.
Yeah, One Piece does this pretty similarly. Says something very similar. We'll introduce another character, and then, but the thing you have to do in order to make them feel like they have more of an impact is you have to reference their feats and stuff later. And I don't think Shield Hero can really do that with the Swordswoman lady because she's so far below the power level that the story is at that they can't really focus on her unless they were to like really zoom in on the minutiae or the minutia.
True. Sometimes the minutia kind of ruin it, but
that is not it's not impossible to fix this though. Slime, the time I got reincarnated, Slime did this by having the slime leave the country for a little while and focus on a little school. They stopped the main plot line to zoom in on a little thing and give you more of what it had in the beginning. Personally, there's this story called Isekai Nanbiri Noka, which is about farming, that I think personally handles the isekai formula in my favorite way. It's not focused on the drama and the big old overarching plot line of the destruction of the world kind of jam, you know? Like, I just like it when things can be slice of lifey.
And this is part of the reason why Konosuba is a great subversion of typical isekai tropes, and it's one of the greater comedy series out there.
Yeah, Konosuba is definitely a 10 out of 10 in my books. I just prefer stories like that. Whenever they introduced like in almost every isekai I've read, like in Slime, in RE0, in this, you've got the shot where they introduced the new bad guy that's threatening the entire world. That's so much more powerful than everyone else that they could practically one-shot every single major character that's been introduced thus far, except for the main character. That like is enough to instantly unhook me from a plot. At this stage, like unless Shield Hero gets me back in, I don't feel like I personally will be all that invested in what's happening. I haven't read the most recent chapter about the giant turtle being already dead, just because it's like I don't really feel the urge to pick it up. I don't really want to know what happens with that part of the storyline.
I mean, to be honest, I barely remember what happened after the reveal of the land turtles being apparently dead. So, and that's one thing that's just a me thing, not to the quality of the work itself, is that my memory is very poor, and plus I read it a long while ago, so.
Yeah, that's why I gave it the more conservative 3.5 out of 5, because like it could bomb. Food Wars is bombing right now, and I would have probably given it like a 4 out of 5 when I first started reading it, but nowadays it's a straight 0. And this could go the same direction. I'm not looking at this like One Piece and saying like, oh my god, I'm so excited for the new chapter. A new chapter will release, and I'll just be like, they're probably going to focus on a plotline I'm not all that interested in. Raftalia and Philo are my favorite characters, but even they aren't super relevant to the plot. Like, at this current stage, you could probably have Raftalia and Philo just stay home, chill out, and I don't think the plot would really change all that much.
Fair enough, but speaking of those two in particular, let's actually get to the characters themselves.
Oh yeah, so we should probably start with our main character right now, Fumi.
Yep.
Yeah. So the Shield Hero. Take it away, Tony.
Well, with Naofumi, he's a college student that is from our timeline. So let's just go conservatively with the 2010s. Mostly leaning towards when the light novel was initially written, but I would mostly go with 2017, 18, just to be a bit more conservative.
Yeah.
So he's in his early 20s, and he's transported to this other world where he meets the other four heroes. Mobiyasu, who is the spear hero, Ren, who is the sword hero, and I forgot the name of the bow hero.
I can't remember him either. Honestly, the other heroes, like, I feel like he really struck gold with how immediately interesting Raftalia and Philo's designs were, and the strong, like, ability that the strong sort of connection that you'll feel to these characters after seeing them grow up, that just sort of gets wasted as they aren't the main characters, and the heroes are really much more of a focus, but the other heroes are just so boring.
Actually, I kind of view the other heroes are scum.
Yeah, but just because they're scum doesn't mean they're interesting. You can make me hate
I do not like these characters at all. They are scum in their own special ways.
Well, hold on for a moment, because just because they're scum, like them being scum isn't linked, is what I mean to say. So, from an unbiased, like, not mattering about how like you like them or not, like, do you feel like they're well designed or well developed characters in any way?
I mean, I view them as fairly cocky individuals that kind of view this world as nothing but a game and not willing to, in one of the chapters, work with the rules set out by the matriarch of the town that they're summoned in.
Because you need all of them to be against the shield hero, aside from like one or two traits like the bow hero's intelligence and the lance hero's crazy love for women, aside from those occasional traits, all of them have to be the same character to align against the shield hero. So the shield hero will get plenty of chances to be like, I'm well deservedly edgy, but they just don't get the time, nor do they have the ability to shine, even if they did have the time. You know what I mean?
Well, but here's one of the things that, sure, maybe a more biased view of things, but this is just my honest opinion. Sure, these characters are designed to kind of represent different archetypes in the isekai genre in a way.
Really? I didn't make that connection at all, actually.
Because think of it like this. Ren is kind of portrayed as someone that, when you have a lot of isekai heroes, the shield, the spear, and the bow hero, they're viewed as very powerful because they have very offensive weaponry.
Uh-huh.
So, with them getting their upgrades and level ups because they're more revered to a certain religion, and they can get away with things more so because of their representation in this world's lore, they can get away with it. Also, the representatives of different personality traits that are from different kind of tropes. Mobiyasu is kind of this parody, yet not a parody, of a harem lead in a world like this.
See, that's the thing, though. Like, if they had actually been based on other isekai heroes, I think that would have been a lot more interesting. For example, the Lance hero, yeah, he's a womanizer and has a harem kind of thing going on, but he feels like the background character from Konosuba, who had those exact same character traits and also wasn't interesting.
Well, to be fair, the one thing that me and Jordan will always point out when it comes to the spear hero, he is a very naive individual. And sometimes naivety isn't a bad thing, but when you're pretty much pulled around by an individual that is in it for their own personal and religious agenda, you really can't really connect with a character like that, even though you can sympathize with aspects of that character. But when you see other ridiculousness, like their utter disregard for the feelings and for their action, the feelings of those they inevitably save, and the actions that they overtly cause, like Mobiyasu sure, grabbing a seed, thinking that, oh, this can help this village actually grow food, but in the end, end up pretty much cursing the land to have nothing but a giant plant monster. And then Ren ultimately deciding to kill a dragon, but not getting rid of its corpse, which led to a plague that infected the town that was in its vicinity.
Yeah, like I said in the YouTube video comment that you never read.
Which I did.
They should have just eaten that dragon, letting that kind of food go to waste.
Yeah, I did read it.
Oh, we didn't bring it up. That breaks my heart, Tony.
Well, I'm sorry,
it's
but
like,
I did.
It's like telling me you knew I was at the door, but you didn't open it, despite the fact that rain was on my head. It's the exact same thing.
It's a big old shame. And then we get to the bow hero, and he basically treats one of the people who are absolutely devoted to him like dirt, like they're beneath his feet, because he's a little brat.
I actually couldn't tell the difference in my head from the sword hero who killed the dragon to the bow hero.
Well, and that's kind of a flaw for these characters individually. But let's get back to Naofumi, our protagonist.
So it is actually important that we brought up the other heroes here, because one of his most defining character traits is that he takes this world much more seriously than the other three. Like you said, he cleans up their messes, and he takes individuals' lives much more seriously, which gives him a lot more chances to feel passionate about things, which in turn lets us know more about his character. Like,
yeah, because sure, he was a bit naive when he came to the other world, but after the events of Mind basically placing a accusation of rape on him, and all because he's the shield hero, he is the demon to the divine trinity that is the spear, sword, and bow heroes, which is the religion that Mine and her father subscribe to. So, with this allegation being treated like a monster, and with Mine being a princess of the kingdom that the heroes were summoned in, pretty much gave him this very pessimistic and very jaded outlook while living in this world when he initially starts the story. And then when he gets Raptalia and Philo as slaves, by the way, and he treated them more with respect and dignity than he was treated, even though he had this very tsundere act to him when he was trying to show some sort of affection to Raptalia and Philo.
Yeah, I agree on pretty much all of those notes. I really like how he's like immediately a driven sort of character, you know what I mean? Because like he has a clear goal and he has a clear enemy. It doesn't matter that the other people in the kingdom aren't that well developed or fleshed out, because their purpose is that they are a situation. They are not people to interact with. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they are people that are trying, well, the blacksmith, for example. Sure, when Mine offered to help Naofumi out, and after he talked to the blacksmith and started frequenting his shop, and after the allegation and the fact that he was thrown out of the city, the blacksmith was about to hit him, but the blacksmith really looked into his eyes and kind of saw that, why would you do that? I'm going to be cautious about being near you. But Naofumi always continues to go to his store, and the blacksmith saw, hey, yeah, I can actually see that you didn't do it, so I respect you as a person. Even though it's a very high crime to attack women, because in this world, instead of a monarchy in the sense that it's a king ruling this kingdom, it's a matriarchy. So it's a queen technically ruling over the nation, rather than the king that we first meet.
I get it, yeah. Personally, I like how they sort of wrapped up his story, but I'm not very satisfied with the fact that that wasn't saved for an ending. The same thing with vigilantes. Our character had a driving trait that was basically their core, and it's just sort of taken out. but they're not done with the story yet. They need him to keep going. He just isn't as interesting a character, I think, once they've wrapped up the whole accusation.
Yeah, but then you have this caveat here. If they were to continue it on for longer and save it until the end, how long would be too long? That would delay the reveal of the queen. That would lead to him being still treated as kind of a villain and a monster.
Personally, I would not use the queen at all. I wouldn't have brought her up at all. I would have just said that she was still missing. I would have had him travel to the Beast Folk continent and have him gain supporters there and have Raftalia have much more of an impact with her whole I was a slave in that country, but this guy is a cool guy. I'll vouch for him under like an oath or something. You get a chance to flesh out more of the world, you introduce more characters, and you don't remove the threat that is the main kingdom just like that, you know? And then now he's got really no enemies in his pocket except for the world enemies in the other corner, except for the world-destroying Armageddon boss. You can't really do any more zoom in on the minutiae kind of thing because you don't have any villains left for him to focus on that sort of scale. All that's left for him to do is prepare for that big battle against a super evil spirit girl.
I mean, true, but also you would get some fans that wouldn't be too satisfied if they were to prolong it for much longer.
That's the thing. You don't have to resolve it. It doesn't have to be the kind of thing that's just proven. You can just keep going. Most people in their lives don't have a moment where the other person is proven to be completely false. When this sort of stuff happens in real life, most of the time you have to move on. And that sucks. But here's an anime that can talk about it and provide a power fantasy to people stuck within those situations. But no, they just sort of fix it. I mean, I like the moment, but it's like candy, you know? I like candy, but at the same time, I get that it's not good for me. And going on, it's going to be very clear why the better decision was to not do it yet. If you're going to do it, it should probably be the finale, because that's the finale of your character. And the rewards you get from doing it, which is him having a better relationship with the other heroes and him having a better relationship with the townspeople, they personally aren't worth it because the townspeople and the other heroes just aren't as interesting.
I mean, fair. I can see from your perspective, yet I can play devil's advocate for a side that is really more gunning for just getting that initial plot out of the way so it's not the major crux.
Yeah. Plus, it would give you a chance to flesh out the other kingdom, which we know exists, and is probably filled with cute animal girls. Like going to and meeting the Chocobo race, that was pretty cool. This could be more of that, except with Raftalia, and then she would get an actual impact on the plot. Because as it stands now, she's just a high-level raccoon girl.
Well, let's actually talk about Raftalia.
Yeah, she's pretty interesting, but I think that her main purpose is to just serve as the character who understands Naofumi. And then she just gets put onto the bench. She's kind of like a Pokemon. She just lives in her Pokeball until she needs to fight something, and then she's sort of just put back in her Pokeball.
That sounds like a bit of a disservice to her character, but that is essentially her role in the story. But let's just talk about her as a character in the story.
Yeah.
And how she is one of the better characters within this story as a whole.
Yeah, you remember what I was saying earlier with like good payoffs? Seeing Raftalia happy is a good payoff, and she makes a lot of the suffering of a lot of early chapters much more bearable because you get to see her being happy and eating delicious food and all that stuff, and their relationship beginning to grow and foster in a really interesting way because you don't tend to see father-daughter-esque relationships in an isekai story. So yeah, Raftalia is definitely a star, and the fact that she is completely sidelined like in now, is honestly one of my most disappointing parts. I feel like she could absolutely hold an entire arc on herself and still be interesting.
Yeah, and I can agree with you there. And the stuff that they did with Philo, which we will get into later, I really like that concept that they in that direction that they went with Philo.
Yeah.
But with Raptalia, I shall leave it to you because you did say that this was one of your favorite characters.
Yeah. But honestly, that's all I really have to say about Raftalia. Even though I'll say she's one of my favorite characters, the character personalities in the story really aren't what hooked me. Like, I would personally give Raftalia a character, like a 7 out of 10. And she gets the highest score of the cast just on the merit that she's the most interesting. She's definitely not my waifu. Honestly, I can't even imagine what having a conversation with her would be like, because she's just sort of there. She's got that whole, like, ooh, I'm excited to try things out personality, and the I love Naofumi personality trait. And then she's also kind of sensible, but that's just sort of where it ends. I mean, like, what would a conversation with her be like? What would she be doing if she wasn't still with the shield hero? Where would she be going? What does she seek to do with her life aside from just be the sword to the shield hero?
True. But her backstory of being a slave after her parents were killed in a wave.
I feel like that's the only real way you can do a slave storyline, because I can't imagine anything else they could have done. And I've also read other isekai where they have slaves, and that's pretty much the same character trait. Uh, the main thing that goes for me is that I just like seeing her happy, and her design is an easy 9 or 10 out of 10. I also kind of like that she faces her fear, but that doesn't really go anywhere, to be honest. They just sort of finish it, and she's a stronger character, and then she's like, look at me, look how strong I am! But then the camera pans away to go look at the other heroes, and it's like, ooh, look at what the Lance hero is doing right now.
Yeah, that's kind of a shame. So let's move on to Philo.
I like the concept of the hero getting another party member through the gacha. That is something that should be explored in more depth. Just do it. Just please. Just have that whole randomness associated with it, and then there's a lot more you can do with it. You can have feelings of inadequacy from, like, realizing, hey, wait, I was probably the common role on that thing. There's so much to do with that, and the gacha is so popular these days. Explore it. I guess you got a good role, though, since she's turning out to be the goddess of the chocobos.
Oh, even though what she is a philatol or filial.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they are essentially chocobos, but
yeah, straight up chocobos. Like, I saw her transform. Or I saw her being that chocobo bird that looked exactly like a chocobo, and then she turns into a fat chocobo.
But when she first hatches out of the egg, fucking adorable.
Yeah, she is a very adorable character. She and Raftalia are the strongest design-wise in the entire story. Although they're kind of the only people that are very strongly designed. I like the mascot girl. I like the concept of the mascots. But if this were a JRPG, they would be the only party members I would consider using. Not because they're the best, but because everyone else is just sort of
just very eh. But when it comes to Philo, with her being a queen of her own species because of the circumstances with the previous queen, I think is very interesting.
I got the impression that was just more of, like, giving stuff to the shield hero. I feel like a lot of isekai and power and self-insert fantasy kind of things are really meant to give the idea that, hey, in this world, you would be appreciated just for being yourself. I don't think Naofumi really has to do anything that's, like, way out of his element, like socialize or charismatically woo somebody. Like, he can just be himself, which is a reliable person who doesn't give up. And he can just be himself, and boom, the bird he hatched just happens to be, and just is now a queen because of his raising of her, which is a good decision. You should definitely do that. Except with isekai, you get that point where you see these characters that have otherwise poor lots, and you get to see them be happy, and then they're kind of done. Slime stops focusing on these characters once they've, kind of completed their arcs, and goes to introduce new characters. The farming one just keeps constantly introducing new concepts and doesn't linger on anything at all. This one, I don't really think you can do too much more with her.
Yeah, true. But in the grand scheme of things, do we really want to?
I think the reason I bring that up is they could finish her arc and it would be satisfying, but then we would be out of one of the two most interesting characters of the story. She needs to carry it if they're not going to introduce any more really likable characters, and she really can't carry it anymore, despite the fact that she is a beast of burden, bird of burden. Oh man, that's great. They should have used that.
But with her being the holy fowl, that would just ruin things.
Yeah. Overall, yeah, if this were like designed as an RPG, these two characters would be pretty interesting, but you really get the impression that they would have to be sidelined because they're not super relevant to the main plot. They would be like Yuffie or Sid. You know, they're interesting in their own way, but they aren't connected to the main storyline, so the main storyline has to progress without them really having too much of a hand in it. Which is a shame, because the main storyline involves the 4 heroes, and only one of them is interesting. It all comes back to that, and the story just keeps doing it too. There's so much more interesting in the world, but the rifts and the other heroes and the battle against the evil spirit, they're really not the most interesting parts of this world, and that's why I'm not super excited for new chapters. Because this is a great manga, but I'm worried that if the chapters continue this way, that I'll reread it and I'll find a stopping point, and I'll just be like, stop right here, which is what happened with Vigilantes. You know, it was a really good series, and then it dropped off the ball, and then it just had to be, just stop right here at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Then you have, well, we don't remember her name, but we'll refer to her as Mascot Girl.
Yeah. She could potentially keep the story going. She's definitely interesting on almost the same level as Raftalia, and I would say on the same level as Feel. But you know, they need more of that. She isn't super relevant to the main plot either. So either the author is going to have to realize that the main focus of his plotline is not the most interesting part of his story, or she won't be enough to save it. You know what I mean?
To be fair, since the manga is just an adaptation of the light novels, maybe we would have more knowledge and know-how with if one of us or both of us were to read the light novels themselves, which there are translated copies and physical translated copies out in bookstores now.
I don't think there's an alliterative title you can do with that, like Manga Maniacs, Weeb Warriors, light novel Lamborghinis.
Yeah, throwing cars into the mix.
I'm not super huge on the light novel scale, just because I can't find a good way to get into it. My Takeyomi app is a great way to read manga, but I don't have something like that for light novels, and so.
Be it as it may, the series itself,
I would argue, is very good, and without the art, I feel like you may be docking too many points away from what makes Shield Hero interesting. And I don't think I would enjoy it all that much. But you were saying?
The one thing that I can take out of this is this other world. The whole point of it being an isekai. I find this world itself and how it works to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the locations that, sure, when we're first meeting into the world, we're in a standard fantasy setting, but in the most recent chapters, we're in a more arid, deserty area, which is a different location, and then you have the different styles of waves. Like the second wave that we're introduced to is based around water. I found that to be very interesting. That the world itself is much bigger rather than staying in a static location.
Yeah. I feel like they could attract more attention if the rifts themselves are just, there was more thought put into it. Like, yeah, the rift that is in the water is pretty interesting because the beasts fall from the sky. But after that, it is pretty interchangeable with the first rift. Enemies appear, they're just fighting the enemies. Get onto the big ship, and then you just fight enemies like regular. It the thing that made that rift different was the appearance of like the spirit and all these other characters, and the other characters that were working with Naofumi earlier. But aside from that, it just doesn't really appeal to my more video game based mind. It doesn't really focus on the things that I like about the story. It doesn't really expand upon the setting either, because this rift almost feels like it's taking place in a bubble. But
I mean, and that's very fair, but
it's an
I like
action
the
setting and
ideas.
it progresses the plot, so I get why it's there.
I like the ideas behind a lot of these different locations and the different waves.
Mhm.
And I think just on concept alone is very interesting, and the way they handle the waves differently for each one is also very interesting, and how Naofumi, being the only one of the heroes really putting forth the effort of trying to save people in the village, that actually gave him time to actually help them, and pretty much liked him after he helped them out.
Yeah.
Whereas the three more offensive heroes went after the boss itself.
Yeah. I guess that just gives more personality to the shield hero, although it takes personality away from the other three. Honestly, I don't think you can save any storyline involving the other heroes. They should probably bite the dust, and then the shield hero just travels on his own for a while.
Yeah, I can agree with you there.
They should probably bite the dust. Then the shield hero gets the weapons. Then he needs to distribute the weapons among his allies, or find new champions out in the world.
But they
Because
already established the rule where once the heroes are summoned, they all have to die in order for new heroes to be summoned again.
yeah, I guess I'm
But
just trying to like think of ways they could distance it from this one, you know?
But I think if that's all we have to say about the characters that are the focus characters and some of the other side characters, let's just give our final thoughts.
Yeah, my final thoughts. Even though I talked negatively about it, it's still a pretty gripping read. It definitely feels like it's meandering now, so I'm gonna stick with my cautious 3.5. I like a lot of the bits, but I also dislike a lot of them, and it seems like it's leaning more towards those sides. How about you?
Well, I'm still going to keep my 4 out of 5 rating. It's one of the better isekai stories out there. And it's more of a character-driven story, more or less, barring some hiccups like you pointed out here, Jeffrey. And I think those hiccups may hinder it a bit, but in the grand scheme of things, I think if it leads to that, oh well, as long as I'm in it for the ride, it's not going to bother me personally, but it may bother other people. But I can see the inherent faults in it.
Yeah. So those are our final thoughts. Do you have any last words you'd like to give to our audience members?
Well, one thing I'll say is that if you enjoyed this more kind of comprehensive and spoilery review of at least where the manga's at right now, and you're willing to have more Shield Hero goodness, check out Weeb Warriors, where me and my friend Jordan review the anime adaptation.
And my final notes.
By the way,
yeah,
the anime adaptation now has an English dub.
Yeah, I heard you talking about the Weeb Warriors. I'm excited. I probably won't watch it, but it's good that there is that option. And it'll definitely get more fans into the series.
And another fun fact is that the dubbed episodes are released at the same time as the subbed episodes.
Oh, a simuldub. Very interesting.
But it's not a typical simuldub, what Funimation tends to do. What happened here is that once episode 9 drops in its sub version, the dub version of episode 9 dropped right at the same time with it.
Oh, nice.
So it's a very interesting ploy that they did here.
Are you trying to throw an accusation at them, Tony?
Oh, no. I'm saying that it's a very interesting strategy that they're going with here.
Well, I have a fun fact for you, too. In Japan, currently, there is an incredibly rampant North American raccoon population problem. So you should definitely make sure to not feed raccoons and report them to animal control if you should see any.
Well, there are no
They will not look at you with sleepy eyes and wiggle their ears. Raccoons in real life are trash. Trash pandas, but still trash.
But if you want to have another fun fact about animals out there, according to some knowledge, pandas and koalas are terrible animals.
I like koalas more than raccoons. That's how the episode should end.
Congratulations. We have now come to the conclusions that raccoons are below in quality compared to koalas, and that all three of these animals are pretty terrible and trash here. So with that, another episode of Manga Maniacs in the snow up here in Oregon ends. So just check out my Instagram like I normally would say with Weeb Warriors.
And check me out at pleasedon'tbullymenagatoro.com.edu.
You finally put that joke in there, didn't you? Child, I don't know what to do with you.